Richard swore on his mother's grave that the merger in London was a life-or-death situation for the company. He told me not to call, not to text, and definitely not to FaceTime him for 10 days because the negotiations were brutal. But 3 days later, while sipping my Earl Grey tea, I got a notification on my phone. My husband wasn't in London. He was right here in the city, dropping $5,000 at a luxury spa with his 20-something personal assistant. As soon as the transaction cleared, I didn't cry, I didn't throw a vase. I picked up my phone, called the bank, and turned his prestigious unlimited black card into a useless piece of plastic. This is where the story truly begins. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? Which country are you watching from? Leave a comment and let me know. And please hit that like button and subscribe to become part of Mama Joyce's Chronicles community for more inspiring stories. It was a Tuesday evening when Richard left. I was in the sunroom of our penthouse, carefully polishing the silver tea set that had been in my family for 3 generations. Richard walked in, dragging his Louis Vuitton carry-on, looking sharp in that navy blue suit I bought him for his birthday. He smelled like a mix of expensive leather, cedarwood cologne, and stress. But looking back, maybe that stress was actually just guilt. "Joyce, I'm heading out," he said, checking his watch like he was counting down the seconds to freedom. He didn't even look at me. "The car is downstairs. Remember what I said. The London partners are sharks. I need total focus. My phone will be off most of the time, so don't panic if you can't reach me." I put down the polishing cloth and looked at him. I'm 60 years old. I built Sterling & Co. from the ground up when Richard was still figuring out how to tie a tie. But ever since I retired 5 years ago to enjoy my golden years, Richard had taken over as CEO. He liked to act like he was the king of the castle, and I was just the old queen mother sitting in the tower. 10 days is a long time, Rick," I said softly. "Are you sure you packed enough heart medication? You know what the doctor said about your blood pressure." He flinched. It was small, but I saw it. He hated being reminded that he was pushing 62. He dyed his hair to hide the gray and went to the gym 5 times a week, trying to keep up with men half his age. "I'm fine, Joyce. Stop mothering me," he snapped, finally meeting my eyes. His gaze was cold, empty. "Just handle things here. Don't make any big decisions while I'm gone. And seriously, don't call unless the building is on fire." He gave me a quick, dry peck on the cheek, more out of habit than affection, and walked out. I heard the elevator ding, then the heavy silence of the penthouse settled around me. For the last few years, that silence had become my roommate. We used to be partners, Richard and I. We built the business together, but lately he treated me less like a wife and more like an old piece of furniture he couldn't get rid of because it was too heavy. He was always busy, always stressed, always working late. I told myself it was just a business. The market was tough. He was doing it for us. For 3 days, I played the role of the good, retired wife. I watered my bonsai trees. I read my books. I didn't call him. I respected his work emergency. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, I was sitting on the balcony watching the city skyline. It was a beautiful day, but I felt a strange chill in my bones. My phone buzzed on the glass table. I figured it was a spam email or a weather alert. I picked it up casually. It was a notification from the private banking app. As the primary account holder, because let's be real, the family money came from my side and the initial capital for the company was mine, I got alerts for any transaction over $1,000 on the supplementary cards. $8,500 authorized. The Velvet Orchid and Resort. I stared at the screen. The Velvet Orchid? That wasn't in London. It was 40 minutes away, right here on the outskirts of the city. It was one of those ultra-exclusive couples retreats where they charge you a fortune for cucumber water and privacy. Maybe it was a mistake? Maybe his card was cloned? My hands started to shake, not from fear, but from a sudden, icy realization. I tapped on the app to see the details.
The transaction was made physically, using the chip. Then another buzz. $2,200 authorized. The Velvet Orchid room service and champagne package. My stomach dropped. Room service? Champagne? For a man who was supposed to be in a high-stakes merger in London? I sat there frozen. The sounds of the city traffic below seemed to fade away. I remembered asking him to take me to the Velvet Orchid for our 30th anniversary last year. He had laughed at me. "Joyce, be realistic. That place is for honeymooners and influencers. We'd look ridiculous there. Besides, it's a waste of money." A waste of money for me, but apparently not for whoever he was with. I didn't call him to scream. I didn't text him asking, "Where are you?" I knew exactly what he would do. He'd lie. He'd say he lent his card to a client, or that it was a corporate gift. He was a master gaslighter. No, I needed to be smarter. I needed to be the Joyce Sterling who crushed competitors in the 90s. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the Centurion concierge at the bank. I've known the account manager, Mr. Henderson, for 20 years. "Hello, Mrs. Sterling," Mr. Henderson answered on the first ring. "How can I help you today?" "Hello, Arthur," I said. My voice was calm, eerily calm. "I have a security concern regarding the supplementary black card ending in 4098, the one Richard is holding." "Oh, I see some large transactions just came through," Arthur said, his voice tightening. "Do you want me to flag them as fraud?" "No," I said, looking at the bonsai tree I had been pruning. "I don't want to flag the transaction. I want to cancel the card immediately. Mark it as compromised." "Cancel it?" Arthur hesitated. "Mrs. Sterling, that's Mr. Richard's primary source of funds while he's traveling. If I cancel it, it will be declined instantly everywhere. He won't even be able to buy a coffee." "I know, Arthur," I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. "He's in the middle of a very delicate situation. I need to make sure he stops spending my money on it. Cut it off and freeze the joint checking account while you're at it." "Understood, ma'am. Processing it now." I hung up. I took a sip of my tea. It was cold, but I drank it anyway. I checked my watch, 2 p.m. They had just ordered the champagne package. They were probably just getting comfortable. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up. It wasn't a bank notification this time. It was a call. "Hubby." I let it ring. Once, twice, then it stopped. Then it rang again immediately, and again. I watched the screen light up over and over, vibrating against the glass table like an angry hornet. He was panicking. The card was probably just been declined for the tip, or maybe he tried to order something else and got that humiliating transaction denied slip. I finally reached out and silenced the phone. I wasn't ready to talk to him yet. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to feel that sudden sinking feeling in his gut when he realized his safety net was gone. But as I sat there ignoring his desperate calls, a text message popped up on the screen. It wasn't from Richard. It was from a number I didn't have saved, but the preview text made my blood turn into ice water. "Hey, Grandma, thanks for the champagne. Shame you can't be here to see how much Richard enjoys spending your retirement fund on a younger model." Attached was a photo. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. I put on my reading glasses, my hand surprisingly steady. I needed to see this clearly. I tapped the photo to enlarge it. It was a selfie. In the foreground, pouting with glossy red lips, was Elena. She was the brilliant 24-year-old marketing intern Richard had hired 6 months ago. He had told me she was a breath of fresh air for the company, that she had modern ideas. In the photo, she was wearing a fluffy white robe, the Velvet Orchid logo embroidered clearly on the collar, holding a crystal flute of vintage Dom Perignon, my Dom Perignon. And there, in the background, blurred but unmistakable, was Richard. He was shirtless, laughing, peeling a grape like some budget version of a Roman emperor. He looked ridiculous. He looked pathetic, but mostly he looked like a liar. Grandma. That single word stung more than the infidelity. I had built an empire. I had navigated hostile takeovers of recessions while this girl was still learning her ABCs. And now she was drinking my champagne and mocking me to my face. My phone started vibrating again. Hubby was calling for the 20th time. I took a deep breath, channeled my inner boardroom shark, and slid my thumb to answer. I put it on speaker and set it down on the table next to the half-pruned bonsai. "Joyce, finally!" Richard's voice exploded out of the speaker. It was a mix of rage and panic, breathless and high-pitched. "Are you crazy? Did you touch the accounts? The waiter just walked away with my card looking like I'm a criminal. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" I leaned back, crossing my legs. "Hello to you too, Richard. Is it raining?" "Don't play games with me, Joyce," he screamed. I could hear rustling in the background, probably him pacing around the luxury suite, trying not to look broke in front of Elena. "I'm in the middle of a critical dinner with the investors. I tried to pay for the vintage wine to seal the deal, and the card was declined. Declined, Joyce! Fix it, now!" "A critical dinner?" I asked, glancing at the photo on the other screen where he was shirtless. "That's strange, Rick. The bank called. They said there was suspicious activity, a large charge at a local spa, the Velvet Orchid. Since I knew you were in London, I told them it was obviously fraud. I mean, you wouldn't be at a local spa 40 minutes away while you're supposed to be in a board meeting, right?" There was a silence on the other end, a thick, heavy silence. I could almost hear the gears grinding in his head as he tried to come up with a lie on the fly. He stammered, It's a satellite meeting. The partners flew in here. We decided to meet locally to save time. It's a strategy, Joyce. You've been out of the game too long. You don't understand how modern business works." "Right," I said, my voice dripping with fake sympathy. "So you are at the spa?" "Yes, no, I mean, we're using their conference facilities," he shouted, regaining his arrogance. "Look, just unfreeze the card. I have to pay this bill or the merger is dead. Do you want to destroy everything we built?" "I can't, Rick," I lied smoothly. "Since I confirmed it as fraud, the bank locked it down. It takes 48 hours to reset. Security protocol. You know how strict they are these days." 48 hours? He sounded like he was being strangled. "I can't wait 48 hours. I have expenses. I have to get back to the office." "Well, surely you have some cash," I asked innocently. "Or maybe your partners can cover the bill? If they are such big shots, they wouldn't mind covering a few $1,000s for a strategy meeting, right?" "Joyce, I have to go, Rick. My tea is getting cold. Good luck with the merger." I hung up. I didn't give him a chance to respond. The satisfaction was sweet but short-lived. I knew Richard. He was slippery. He would call his friends, he would borrow money, or he would bully the hotel staff into billing the company directly. He would find a way back to the city, and when he did, he would be furious. I needed to be ready. I walked into his home office. It was a room I rarely entered. He always called it his man cave and kept the door locked, claiming he had sensitive client files in there. But I was the one who paid for the lock. I reached under the hallway console table, peeled back the tape, and grabbed the spare key I had hidden there 10 years ago. A wise woman always keeps a back door open. I unlocked the heavy oak door and stepped inside. The room smelled of stale cigars and secrets. I sat in his leather chair. It felt too big, too pompous, and opened his top drawer. It was empty, except for a few pens. Too clean. I checked the bottom drawer. Locked. I grabbed the letter opener from his desk and jammed it into the lock. With a sharp twist and a grunt of effort, the wood splintered and the drawer popped open. Inside wasn't a stack of cash or a burner phone. It was a file, a thick blue folder with the label Project Phoenix. I opened it. The first page wasn't about a merger. It was a draft of a legal document. I adjusted my glasses, skimming the legal jargon. My heart started to hammer against my ribs harder than when I saw the photo of Elena. Irrevocable power of attorney, transfer of assets, competency hearing request for Mrs. Joyce Sterling. I flipped the page. There was a medical evaluation form partially filled out by a doctor I didn't know, listing symptoms of early onset dementia and financial incapacity. He wasn't just cheating on me with a 24-year-old intern. He wasn't just spending my money on champagne. He was planning to have me declared incompetent. He was planning to commit me to a facility, take full control of the company, and legally steal every penny I had to start a new life with Elena. I dropped the file on the desk. My hands were shaking uncontrollably now. The nausea hit me like a wave. The cheating was a betrayal of the heart, but this was a betrayal of my life. He wanted to erase me. My eyes fell on a sticky note attached to the back of the file. It was in Richard's handwriting. Timeline, execute immediately after London trip. Elena wants the penthouse by September. September was next month. I stood up. The shock vanished, replaced with a cold, hard rage that made my vision sharp. I wasn't a victim. I was Joyce Sterling, and I had destroyed better men than him for less than this. He wanted a war? He wanted to declare me incompetent? I picked up the file and walked out of the office. I went straight to the wall safe in the master bedroom, spinning the dial to the combination only I knew. I pulled out my emergency burner phone, the one I kept for real emergencies, and dialed a number I hadn't used in 5 years. "Michael," I said when the voice answered, "it's Joyce. I need a forensic accountant and a shark of a divorce lawyer at my penthouse in 1 hour. And bring a locksmith. We're changing the locks." "Joyce?" sounded Michael, surprised. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said, looking at the photo of Richard and Elena on my main phone one last time. "But it's about to be very bad for someone else. Oh, and Michael, find out everything you can about a girl named Elena. I want to know where she lives, who her parents are, and exactly how much debt she's in." I hung up. I was just getting started. But as I turned to leave the bedroom, my main phone lit up again. It wasn't Richard. It was a notification from the smart doorbell camera. Someone was at the front door of the penthouse building downstairs. I checked the video feed. It wasn't Richard coming back early. It was a woman, an older woman looking furious, hammering on the lobby call button. I zoomed in. It was Richard's mother, and she looked like she was ready to tear the door down with her bare hands. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. I stared at the monitor. It was Mildred, Richard's 82-year-old mother. She was pressing the buzzer like she was trying to transmit Morse code for SOS. I hadn't seen Mildred in 6 months. She usually claimed her sciatica was too bad to travel. But apparently, the news that her precious son's credit card was declined was a miracle cure. I pressed the intercom button. "Hello, Mildred. To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Open this door, Joyce." Her voice crackled through the speaker, shrill and demanding. "I know you're up there. Richard just called me. He's stranded. How dare you cut him off? He's your husband." "He's currently a husband enjoying a champagne package with a 24-year-old at the Velvet Orchid, Mildred," I said, my voice flat. "I'm sure he's not suffering too much." "I don't care about his dalliances," she shrieked. "Open the door or I'm calling the police and telling them you're having one of your episodes." My grip tightened on the counter. Episodes. So she was in on it too. She knew about the Project Phoenix file. She was part of the gaslighting campaign to paint me as senile so they could steal my company. I buzzed her in, not because I was scared, but because I needed to look the enemy in the eye. I needed to know exactly how deep the rot went. 3 minutes later, the elevator doors slid open directly into the penthouse foyer. Mildred stormed in, leaning on her cane more for dramatic effect than necessity. She was wearing her Sunday best pearls I bought her for Christmas 5 years ago. "You spiteful woman," she spat, marching toward me. "Richard is in the middle of a delicate business negotiation, and you're playing petty games with the bank accounts? Do you want to ruin the family name?" "The family name?" I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Mildred, the name on the building is Sterling. That's my name. Richard just married into it. And as for the negotiation, unless he's negotiating how to peel grapes for a toddler in a bathrobe, I don't think business is his priority." Mildred stopped a few feet away from me. She didn't look ashamed. She looked smug. "Oh, stop being such a prude, Joyce. You're 60 years old. You're dried up. You can't expect a virile man like Richard to be satisfied with tea and books." She looked me up and down with disdain. "Elena is good for him. She gives him energy. And, unlike you, she respects him." The audacity took my breath away for a second. "So you knew? You knew he was cheating on me with the intern?" "I knew he was finding happiness," she corrected, lifting her chin. "And frankly, it's for the best. Once Richard takes over the company legally next month, after we get you the help you need, Elena will be a wonderful hostess for the firm. She has the look. You're just past your expiration date." There it was, the confession. She didn't just know about the affair, she was already planning the redecoration. She viewed me as a placeholder that had stayed too long. "Get out," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was dangerous. "Excuse me?" I said, "Get out of my house, Mildred. This is my penthouse. Deed is in my name, bought with my money before I even met your leech of a son." I stepped closer to her, and for the first time I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "And tell Richard that if he wants to declare me incompetent, he'd better bring an army of lawyers, because I'm about to rain hellfire on both of you." "You can't talk to me like that. I'm his mother." "And I'm his landlord. Get out." I pointed to the elevator. Mildred huffed, adjusted her purse, and turned around muttering something about ungrateful and crazy. As the elevator doors began to close, she shouted one last thing. "He's going to win, Joyce! He has the power of attorney paperwork. You signed it yourself 3 months ago when you thought it was the insurance renewal. You're already finished." The doors slammed shut, cutting off her cackle. I stood there, stunned. 3 months ago, the stack of papers he brought home, saying it was for the new life insurance policy on the vacation home, I had signed them without reading the fine print because I trusted him. I had signed my own death warrant. My knees felt weak, but before I could collapse, my burner phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Michael. "Joyce, listen to me carefully." Michael's voice was urgent, fast-paced. "I ran the background check on Elena. You need to sit down. She's not just an intern. Her real name isn't even Elena. And that debt Richard is paying off for her? It's not student loans. It's something much, much worse. You are in serious danger." If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. I sank onto the plush velvet sofa, the power of attorney document still clutched in my hand. Serious danger, Michael? What do you mean? Her real name is Elara Vance, Michael said, his voice grim. And she's not 24, Joyce. She's 32. Her parents weren't exactly choir boys. They ran a string of loan shark operations and, let's just say, had some creative ways of collecting debts. Elara learned the business from them. She's not an intern. She's a debt collector with a reputation. And the guy she was with on that yacht photo? That's not Richard. That's Dmitry Volkov, a notorious underworld figure. Richard is just his puppet. My blood ran cold. Elara, not Elena, a 32-year-old debt collector. And Dmitry Volkov? I'd only heard his name whispered in hushed tones in business circles, a man you absolutely did not want to cross. Richard wasn't just having an affair. He was involved with dangerous people. The merger in London wasn't a business trip. It was a setup. A puppet? What are you talking about? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Richard's company has been bleeding money for years, Joyce. He's been borrowing from Volkov through Elara to keep it afloat. That $4,500 spa bill and the champagne, that was just to keep her happy. He's in deep, Joyce, deeper than you can imagine. The Project Phoenix file you found, it's not about declaring you incompetent. It's about covering his tracks. Volkov is demanding his money back, and Richard doesn't have it. He's been trying to liquidate company assets, including yours, to pay Volkov off. My head was spinning. All those years of Richard being stressed, of him being busy with critical deals. It wasn't about building our empire. It was about digging himself out of a hole, and he was willing to drag me down with him. So, the merger? I started. There is no merger, Joyce. That was just a story to get him out of the country and give him time to make his move on you. Volkov probably has him trapped somewhere right now, waiting for him to deliver the money or the assets. Michael paused. He's using you, Joyce. He's using you and your company to pay off his debts to a criminal. I looked at the Project Phoenix file, the power of attorney, the forged competency report. He wasn't just trying to steal my money, he was trying to steal my freedom, and his mother, Mildred, was complicit. Michael, I said, my voice firming up, I need you to do something for me. Find out where Richard is being held. I need to know if Volkov has him or if he's just hiding from the bank. And I need you to find out how much Richard owes Volkov specifically, every single dollar. You're not planning on confronting them, are you, Michael? This is dangerous. No, Michael, I'm not confronting them. I'm outsmarting them. I stood up, pacing the living room. Richard thought he could fool me, that he could use my trust to destroy me. He forgot who I am. He forgot that I built Sterling and Sia with my own 2 hands. I'm not going down without a fight. I went back to Richard's desk. I picked up the file again, my eyes scanning the names and dates. Power of attorney for Mrs. Joyce Sterling, executed by Richard Thorne. Date 3 months ago. 3 months ago. That was right around the time Richard had started talking about new investment opportunities and strategic partnerships. He had even asked me to sign some documents for a new subsidiary that would streamline operations. I had signed them without a second thought. Then my eyes landed on another document within the file. It wasn't a power of attorney. It was a handwritten note tucked beneath some legal forms. It was in Richard's frantic scrawl. Dmitry received the initial tranche. Phoenix is a go. Need the remaining funds wired by end of month. Elena is handling comms. She'll advise on the final asset liquidation. The old woman won't know a thing. Target September 1st for acquisition. Thorne is ours. ... R. Dmitry Volkov, initial tranche, Phoenix, acquisition. It all clicked into place. Project Phoenix wasn't about declaring me incompetent. It was about liquidating all assets, including the company and the penthouse, to pay off Volkov. And September 1st was only 3 weeks away. He was planning to sell everything under me. He was planning to leave me with nothing while he escaped with his mistress and Volkov's money. My hands were no longer shaking. They were clenched into fists. Rage, cold and calculated, filled me. I wasn't just going to divorce him. I was going to destroy him and anyone who helped him. "Michael," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "I need that divorce lawyer, and I need him now. And tell him this isn't just about adultery. It's about criminal fraud, embezzlement, and a conspiracy to defraud me of my entire life's work." As I was talking, my main phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call from Richard. It was a text from a blocked number. "He's playing you, Grandma. Richard is not the one in trouble. Volkov is, and you're about to become collateral damage. Unless you want to end up like my father, you need to do exactly as I say." Attached was another photo. This one was taken from a distance, blurry. 2 men arguing heatedly in a dimly lit room. One of them looked undeniably like Richard, his face a mask of fear. The other was bulkier, with a shaved head and an intimidating presence. Dmitry Volkov. The message was clear. Richard wasn't the puppet master. He was the puppet. And Alara, she was playing her own game. The clock was ticking. September 1st. I had less than 3 weeks. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. I stared at the text from the blocked number. Collateral damage. Ilara wasn't warning me out of the kindness of her heart. She was a shark circling the water, smelling blood. She knew Richard was drowning, and she wanted to make sure she got her cut before the ship went down. If Richard couldn't pay Volkov, she was probably hoping to scare me into paying up to save my own skin. I didn't reply. I wasn't going to play her game. Instead, I forwarded the screenshot to Michael with a simple instruction. Trace it and get security to the penthouse lobby, now. I had just set the phone down when the private elevator dinged. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced my face into a mask of calm. I sat back on the sofa, picking up my cold cup of tea, looking like the picture of a relaxed, retired woman. The doors slid open. Richard stumbled in, and I mean stumbled. He looked like he'd gone 10 rounds in a boxing ring and lost every single one. His suit, the navy blue one he left in, was wrinkled and stained with what looked like red wine or maybe dried blood. His tie was missing. He had a bruise blossoming on his jawline, and his eyes were wild, darting around the room as if he expected Volkov to jump out from behind the curtains. "Joyce," he rasped, dropping his bag on the floor. "Oh God, Joyce!" He rushed over and collapsed onto the sofa next to me, grabbing my hands. His palms were clammy and shaking violently. "Richard," I pulled my hands back slightly, feigning concern. "What happened? You look like you were run over by a truck. I thought you were in a critical meeting?" I was mugged," he lied, the words tumbling out in a panic. "In the parking lot after the meeting. They took everything, Joyce. My wallet, my phone, the laptop. It was a nightmare. I had to hitchhike back. It was humiliating." I looked at him. Mugged. He was lying to my face, even now. The bruise on his face wasn't from a mugger. It was a message from Volkov. "That's terrible, Rick," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But why didn't you call the police, or call me from a borrowed phone? And why were you at a local spa if you were mugged in London?" He froze. He had forgotten the lie he told on the phone earlier. I told you the meeting was moved," he snapped, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Stop asking questions. I need your help, Joyce. I really need your help." He grabbed my shoulders. He smelled of stale alcohol and fear. "The muggers, they got the confidential merger codes," he whispered, his eyes wide. "If I don't secure the funds to lock the deal by tomorrow morning, the company goes under. Sterling & Co. will be bankrupt. Everything you built, gone." He was good. I'll give him that. He knew exactly which button to press. My legacy. "How much, Richard?" I asked. "2 million," he said quickly. Too quickly. "I need you to sign a check from your personal trust. Just a bridge loan. I'll pay it back next week when the merger funds clear. Please, Joyce, do it for us. Do it for the company." 2 million. That was likely the exact amount he owed Volkov plus interest. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. 2 million is a lot of money, Rick. I can't just write a check like that without calling the bank manager. It's late. "Call him at home," Richard screamed, standing up. The mask of the loving husband slipped, revealing the desperate rat underneath. "Do it now or we lose everything." "I'll go get my contact book from the bedroom," I said calmly. "Why don't you go take a shower? You smell like a dive bar." Richard looked at me, his chest heaving. He nodded, thinking he had won. Okay, make the call. I'll be out in 10 minutes. He grabbed his bag and bolted for the master bathroom. As soon as I heard the shower turn on, I moved. I didn't go to the bedroom. I went straight to the bag he had dropped on the floor, the Louis Vuitton carry-on he dragged in. I unzipped it. It wasn't full of clothes. It was stuffed with cash, bundles of $100 bills wrapped with rubber bands. But it wasn't enough to be 2 million, maybe 50,000 tops. His getaway money? But buried under the cash was a thick envelope. I tore it open. Inside were 2 passports, one for Richard Thorne and one for Elara Vance. And underneath the passports was a document that made the room spin. It was a real estate purchase agreement for this penthouse, dated for tomorrow. Buyer, Anonymous LLC. Seller, Richard Thorne, acting as power of attorney for Joyce Sterling. He wasn't just asking for a loan, he had already sold my home. He was going to take the 2 million from me, take the money from the house sale tomorrow, and run away with Elara, leaving me homeless and bankrupt. The shower water turned off. I heard the bathroom door handle click. I shoved the papers back into the bag and zipped it up just as Richard walked out, a towel around his waist, looking expectantly at me. "Did you make the call?" he asked. I smiled. It was the coldest smile I had ever worn. "I did," I lied, "but there's a problem, Rick." "What problem?" he demanded, stepping closer. "I didn't call the bank," I said, holding up the phone I had hidden behind my back. "I called the buyer of the penthouse." Richard's face went white, ghost white. "And," I continued, my voice dropping to a whisper, "I also called someone else who's very interested in where you're hiding that $50,000 in your bag." His eyes darted to the bag, then to the front door, because right at that moment a heavy rhythmic pounding started on the penthouse door. It wasn't the police, and it wasn't the concierge. It sounded like a battering ram. Richard looked at the shaking door, then back at me. His eyes were bulging out of his head. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a walking corpse. "Who is that?" he whispered, his voice cracking. Is it him?" I took a slow, deliberate sip of my tea, even though my heart was pounding like a drum in my chest. "Him? You mean Dmitry Volkov? The man you borrowed money from to fund your midlife crisis and your little girlfriend's shopping spree?" Richard flinched like I'd slapped him. How do you know that name?" "I know everything, Rick," I said, setting the cup down with a sharp clink. I know about Ilara. I know about the fake merger. I know about the passports in your bag, and I know you tried to sell my penthouse right out under me to pay off your gambling debts." The pounding on the door stopped abruptly. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Richard didn't apologize. He didn't beg for forgiveness. He snapped. "You stupid woman," he screamed, lunging toward me. He didn't hit me, but he got right in my face, spraying spit. "You have no idea what you've done. If I don't pay him tonight, he won't just kill me, he'll kill us. You think your little sterling reputation matters to a guy like Volkov?" He scrambled back to the Louis Vuitton bag on the floor, his hands shaking so badly he could barely work the zipper. He ripped it open, checking for the cash and the passports. "I'm leaving," he panted, clutching the bag to his chest like a lifeline. "I'm taking the cash, I'm taking the car, and I'm gone. You can deal with Volkov when he breaks that door down." "You're leaving?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Without your wife? After 30 years?" "30 years of you controlling everything," he spat, backing toward the service entrance in the kitchen. "30 years of being Mr. Joyce Sterling. I'm done. Ilara appreciates me. Ilara treats me like a man." "Ilara is a debt collector, Richard," I said calmly. "She doesn't love you. She was the bait. You were the mark. And now that you're broke, you're just a liability." He hesitated for a second, a flicker of doubt crossing his eyes. But then fear took over again. "Shut up. You're just jealous. I'm leaving." He turned and sprinted toward the kitchen door, the one that led to the service elevator. He fumbled with the lock, threw the door open, and ran out into the hallway, abandoning me to facing whatever was behind the front door alone. He chose the money. He chose the mistress. He chose to leave me to die. I waited until I heard the heavy service door slam shut. Then I stood up and walked calmly to the front door, the one that had been pounded on just moments ago. I unlocked it and swung it open. Standing there wasn't a Russian hitman. It wasn't Dmitry Volkov. It was Michael, my fixer, flanked by two very large men in dark suits who looked like they ate concrete for breakfast. "Did he take the bait?" Michael asked, stepping inside and holstering a heavy-looking flashlight, the battering ram he'd used to pound on the door. "Hook, line, and sinker," I said, a cold smile spreading across my face. "He ran out the back like a rat on a sinking ship. He took the bag." Michael grinned. "Excellent. The tracker is active?" "Sewn into the lining of the bag myself. And the cash?" "Real on top, monopoly money on the bottom. Enough to get him into trouble, not enough to get him out of it." I walked over to the window. I could see the street below. A few seconds later, I saw a figure in a disheveled suit burst out of the service exit, clutching a luxury bag, looking frantically left and right. Richard. He hailed a cab, practically diving into the back seat. "Where is he going, Joyce?" Michael asked, pulling out his tablet to track the signal. "To the airport, or to Ilara. He thinks he has 50 grand and a passport to freedom. He thinks he's escaped." I turned back to Michael, but then his face fell. He tapped his earpiece, listening to something intently. "Joyce," he said, his voice losing his humor, "we have a problem." "What?" "The tracker," Michael said, looking at his tablet. "It's not moving toward the airport, and it's not moving toward Ilara's apartment." "Where is it going?" Michael looked up at me, his face grim. "It's heading to the docks, specifically to a warehouse owned by a shell company registered to Dmitry Volkov, and the cab didn't take him there." "What do you mean?" "The cab driver," Michael said. "Richard didn't get into a random cab. That car, it was waiting for him." My blood ran cold. Ilara hadn't waited for Richard to bring the money. She had sent a pickup crew, and they weren't taking him to a romantic getaway. They were taking him to the butcher shop. And Richard had my bag with the tracker and the fake money. If they opened that bag and found paper scraps instead of $2 million, they wouldn't just kill Richard. They would come for the person who tricked them. "Get the car, Michael," I said, grabbing my coat. My voice was calm, but inside I was vibrating with adrenaline. Michael blocked the door, his large frame filling the frame. Joyce, absolutely not. You are a businesswoman, not a vigilante. We call the police. We let the SWAT team handle this. The police? I shook my head, buttoning my trench coat. By the time the police navigate the jurisdiction issues and get a warrant for a warehouse at the docks, Richard will be fish food. And Volkov? He'll be long gone. Or worse, he'll realize the money is fake and send his goons to burn down my penthouse with me inside to send a message. I stepped closer to Michael, looking him dead in the eye. Richard is a scumbag. He's a cheater and a thief, but he is my husband, and nobody takes out the trash in my house except me. I need him alive to sign over his shares of the company and admit to the fraud. If he dies tonight, the investigation will tie up Sterling & Co. in court for a decade. I won't let that happen. Michael stared at me for a long moment. He saw the steel in my spine that had built an empire. Finally, he let out a frustrated sigh and pulled a Glock 19 out of his shoulder holster. He checked the chamber. "Fine," he grunted, "but you stay behind me, and if I say run, you run. You don't argue, you run." "Deal," I said. We took Michael's SUV. It was armored, something I used to make fun of him for, calling it his paranoia on wheels. Now I was grateful for the bulletproof glass. The drive to the docks was a blur of rain and streetlights. I sat in the passenger seat, clutching the Project Phoenix file. It was my shield. It was the proof that Richard had been acting alone, that he had defrauded me. But it was also leverage. "Tracker says we're 2 minutes out," Michael said, his eyes scanning the dark industrial road. "Warehouse 4B. It's isolated. Perfect place for a hit." "Park around the back," I instructed. "We don't want to announce our arrival until we're ready." We pulled up behind a stack of rusted shipping containers. The rain was coming down hard now, washing the grime off the pavement. The warehouse loomed ahead, a massive, dark beast. A single light bulb flickered above a side door, and parked right in front was the fake taxi. My heart was in my throat. We were really doing this. Michael moved like a ghost, silent and lethal. I followed, careful not to make a sound with my heels. We crept up to a dirty window covered in wire mesh. Inside, the scene was like something out of a nightmare. Richard was on his knees in the center of the concrete floor. He was sobbing, his hands zip-tied behind him. His face was a mess of blood and tears. Standing over him was a giant of a man, Dmitry Volkov. He was wearing a tracksuit that cost more than my first car, and he was holding a heavy pistol loosely in one hand. And sitting on a crate nearby, looking bored and checking her nails, was Alara. She wasn't scared. She was part of the crew. "Please," Richard wailed, his voice echoing in the empty space. "I have the money. It's in the bag. 2 million. Just let me go." Volkov kicked the Louis Vuitton bag that lay on the floor between them. 2 million, eh? You better hope it is, little man, because Alara here says you're broke. She says you're a desperate rat. "She's lying," Richard screamed, looking at Alara with pure betrayal. "We were supposed to run away together. Alara, tell him." Alara laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound. "Oh, Ricky, you were the getaway car, not the destination. I just needed you to liquidate the old lady's assets. But since you failed at that, I figured I'd just sell you to Dmitry instead." Volkov grunted and bent down to unzip the bag. My breath caught in my throat. This was it, the moment of truth. Volkov ripped the zipper open. He reached in and grabbed a handful of the cash bundles. He looked at the $100 bill on top. Real. He smiled, a gold tooth glinting in the dim light. "Okay, looks good." Richard let out a sob of relief. "See? I told you! I told you!" But then Volkov frowned. He ripped the rubber band off the bundle. He thumbed past the first few real bills and hit the filler paper underneath, the monopoly money Michael had packed to give it bulk. He froze. He pulled out another bundle, ripped it open. Paper. He pulled out a third. Paper. The silence in the warehouse was deafening. Even the rain outside seemed to stop. Volkov stood up slowly, the fake money fluttering to the floor like confetti. His face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. He turned to Richard, his eyes burning with demonic rage. "You think this is a game? You bring me toy money?" "No, no!" Richard shrieked, trying to scoot backwards on his knees. "I didn't know. She gave it to me. Joyce! It was Joyce!" Volkov cocked the gun. "Goodbye, Mr. Thorne." "Now!" Michael yelled beside me. He kicked the side door open with a crash that shook the walls. He stormed in, weapon raised. "Federal agent! Drop it!" He was lying, of course. He wasn't a Fed, but in the confusion, it made Volkov hesitate for a split second. And in that split second, I stepped into the light. I walked right past Michael, straight into the center of the warehouse. I didn't look at Richard. I looked straight at Volkov. "Put the gun down, Dmitri," I said, projecting my voice with the authority of 30 years in the boardroom, "unless you want the FBI to see the file I just emailed to them." Volkov spun around, aiming the gun at me. "Who are you?" "I'm the woman whose money you're trying to steal, and I'm the only reason you're not going to jail for life tonight." Alara jumped off the crate, her eyes wide. "That's her! That's the wife! Kill her, Dmitri! She's the one with the real money!" Volkov looked from me to Alara, then to the shivering mess that was Richard. He tightened his grip on the trigger, aiming right at my chest. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't put a bullet in you right now, Grandma." I didn't flinch. I smiled. "Because," I said, pointing to the ceiling beams above him, "you're not the only one who brought friends to the party." Volkov looked up, and his face went pale. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. 3 distinct ruby-red laser dots were dancing on the center of Dmitri Volkov's chest. One was right over his heart, the other 2 on his forehead. Volkov froze. He knew what those dots meant. Snipers. "I didn't come alone, and I didn't come unprepared," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a razor blade. "My associates are positioned on the catwalks. They are former military contractors. They don't have trigger discipline issues, and they certainly don't accept toy money. Drop the gun, Dmitri, or the last thing you'll see is the muzzle flash." It was a bluff. Mostly. The snipers were just 2 of Michael's friends from his security firm holding high-powered laser pointers attached to railings up in the rafters. But in a dark, rainy warehouse with adrenaline pumping, it looked terrifyingly real. Volkov's eyes darted around the shadows of the ceiling. He swallowed hard, the Adam's apple bobbing in his thick neck. He slowly uncurled his fingers. The heavy pistol clattered onto the concrete floor. "Smart choice," I said. Michael moved instantly, kicking the gun away and stepping between Volkov and me, his own weapon still raised. "You're crazy!" Alara shrieked, backing away until she hit a stack of crates. "You're a crazy old witch! You can't do this!" "I'm a businesswoman, Alara," I corrected her, adjusting my coat. "I assess risk and I manage assets. And right now, you 2 are liabilities." I looked down at Richard. He was still on his knees, staring at me with a look of pure, pathetic worship. "Joyce," he blubbered, snot running down his nose. "Oh, thank God. I knew you'd come. I knew you loved me. We can fix this, honey. We can—" "Shut up, Richard," I said. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I spoke to him the way one speaks to a dog that has just soiled the carpet. "I didn't save you because I love you. I saved you because I'm not done with you yet. Prison is too good for you right now." I turned my attention back to Volkov. He was standing with his hands half raised, looking furious but trapped. "Here's the deal, Dmitri," I said, reaching into my trench coat and pulling out a single crisp envelope. "The police are 5 minutes away. Real police, not on my payroll. I called them before I walked in." Volkov's eyes widened. "You called the cops? You're incriminating yourself." I'm the victim here, I smiled. I'm the poor wife whose husband was kidnapped by extortionists. But you're a known felon with a gun and a hostage. I tossed the envelope at his feet. Inside that envelope is a ticket, one way, to a non-extradition country, and a key to a locker at the bus station where you'll find $50,000 in real cash. Consider it a severance package. Volkov looked at the envelope, then at me. Why? Because if you stay, you'll talk, and I don't want you testifying. I want you gone, disappeared. You leave Richard to me, you leave Alara to the police, and you vanish, right now. Volkov didn't hesitate. He knew when a deal was the only lifeline. He snatched the envelope off the floor. He looked at Alara, who was pleading with him with her eyes. "Sorry, babe," Volkov sneered. "Business is business." He turned and bolted toward the back exit, disappearing into the rainy night. "Dmitri, no!" Alara shrieked, running after him. Michael said, stepping in her path and grabbing her by the arm. He wasn't gentle. He spun her around and shoved her back toward the center of the room. "You're not going anywhere, sweetheart!" Alara stumbled and fell next to Richard, the mistress and the husband, the dream team, now just two mud-stained rats on a concrete floor. "Joyce, please," Alara stammered, switching tactics instantly. She pulled her robe tighter, trying to look innocent. "I was forced. He made me do it. Richard told me he was single. He told me he was divorced. I didn't know." "Stop," I said, holding up a hand. "I have your text messages, Alara. Grandma, remember? I have the yacht photos. I have the background check on your loan shark parents. Save the sob story for the jury." Sirens began to wail in the distance, loud, getting closer. Richard struggled to his feet, trying to wipe the blood off his face. He looked at me, a flicker of his old arrogance returning now that the gun was gone. "Okay, Joyce, good job," he panted, trying to straighten his ruined suit. "Now, we need to get our story straight before the cops get here. We tell them Volkov kidnapped both of us. We tell Alara was a victim too, maybe? We need to minimize the scandal. Sterling & Co. can't afford bad press." I stared at him. He truly, genuinely didn't get it. He thought we were back on the same team. "We?" I asked. "Yes, we. We're married, Joyce. Spousal privilege. You can't testify against me without hurting yourself. Now give me the phone. I need to call my lawyer." I laughed. It started as a chuckle and turned into a full belly laugh. It felt good. It felt like releasing 30 years of tension. "Joyce," I said, wiping a tear from my eye, "Richard, you seem to be under the impression I called the police to arrest Volkov." "What? Who else would they arrest?" "You," I said simply. "Me?" Richard's jaw dropped. "For what? Being a victim?" "No," I said, pulling the real document out of my coat pocket, the one I had retrieved from the Project Phoenix file. "You see, Rick, while you were playing gangster, Michael's accountant found the offshore accounts, the ones where you've been siphoning Sterling & Co. profits for 5 years. That's federal wire fraud. That's 20 years minimum." Richard's face went gray. You wouldn't. You'd destroy the company." "I am the company," I said, stepping closer until I was nose to nose with him, "and I'm cutting out the cancer." The warehouse doors burst open. Blue and red lights flooded the room. Officers in tactical gear swarmed in, shouting commands. "Police! Hands in the air! Get down!" Michael holstered his weapon and raised his hands calmly. I stood still, the picture of the traumatized victim. But Richard panicked. He looked at the police, he looked at the open back door where Volkov had escaped, and he made the worst decision of his life. He ran. "Runner! We have a runner!" a cop shouted. "Richard, stop!" I yelled, not to save him, but to witness the finale. Richard scrambled toward the back exit, slipping on the wet concrete. He was 5 feet from the door when a taser probe hit him square in the back. The sound of the electric discharge filled the room. Richard stiffened, screamed, and face-planted into the dirt, twitching uncontrollably. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. As the officers cuffed Alara, who was kicking and screaming profanities, and dragged Richard to his feet, a detective walked over to me. "Ma'am, are you Joyce Sterling?" "Yes, officer," I said, putting on my best shaky voice. "Thank heavens you're here. My husband, he's been stealing from me, and I think he tried to have me killed." The detective nodded grimly. "We'll take care of it, ma'am. We found the bag in the taxi. The fake money? That was smart." "I try," I said, modestly. As they hauled Richard past me, he looked up. His eyes were wild, desperate. "Joyce, call my mother. Call Mildred. She'll tell them. She'll fix this." I leaned in close so only he could hear. "Oh, don't worry, honey. I'm going to visit Mildred next. She's not going to fix this. She's going to join you." Richard was shoved into the back of a squad car. I watched the lights fade into the night. It was over, so I thought. But as my Michael drove me away from the docks, my phone buzzed. It was an email notification from the bank. Alert. Primary vault access attempted. Location, Sterling Manor. User, Mildred Thorne. I checked the time. It was 2 a.m. Mildred wasn't asleep. She was at my house, and she was trying to break into the main family vault, the one that held the diamonds, the bonds, and the original deeds. She was trying to loot the ship before it fully sank. "Turn the car around, Michael," I said, my eyes narrowing. "We're not going to the police station yet. We're going home. Mildred Grandma is trying to rob me."
The tires of the SUV crunched over the gravel driveway of Sterling Manor. It was 2:15 a.m. The house was dark, looming against the stormy sky like a haunted castle in a Gothic novel. But I knew better. I knew the layout of this house because I had designed it, and I knew exactly where Mildred would be. "Lights off," I whispered to Michael. "I want to surprise her." We parked 100 yards down the drive and approached on foot. The front door was locked, but the side French doors leading to the library, my father's library, had been forced open. The glass was shattered near the handle. Mildred wasn't exactly a cat burglar. She was a sledgehammer. We stepped through the broken door, the glass crunching softly under my boots. The library was dimly lit by a single flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. It was dancing frantically across the mahogany bookshelves on the far wall. There she was, Mildred Thorne, the matriarch, who claimed to be the guardian of propriety, was wearing a black tracksuit that looked ridiculous on her frame. She was clawing at the false back of the bookcase, muttering curses under her breath. "Come on, you stupid thing," she hissed, jamming a crowbar into the wood paneling. "Open! Open!" She knew where the vault was hidden, but she didn't have the combination. She was trying to pry a steel-reinforced safe out of a brick wall with a piece of rusted metal. It was desperate. It was pathetic. I signaled Michael to stay back in the shadows. I wanted this moment. "You're going to scratch the mahogany, Mildred," I said, my voice echoing in the large room, "and refinishing that wood costs a fortune." Mildred screamed. She actually jumped in the air, dropping the crowbar with a loud clang. She spun around, blinding me with the flashlight beam for a second before dropping it to the floor. "Joyce," she gasped, clutching her chest. You nearly gave me a heart attack. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be—" "Supposed to be what?" I stepped into the light, crossing my arms. "Supposed to be crying? Supposed to be dead in a ditch somewhere? Or supposed to be senile, like you and your son planned?" Mildred straightened up. She composed herself quickly, I'll give her that. The shock turned into a sneer. "I am here to protect the family assets," she declared, kicking the crowbar under the rug.
Richard called me. He said you've gone mad. He said you were freezing the accounts. I came to secure the bearer bonds and the diamonds before you squandered them on whatever delusions you're having." "Secure them?" I laughed. "You broke a window, Mildred. That's called breaking and entering." "It's my son's house." "It's my house," I roared, my patience finally snapping. "My name is on the deed. My money paid for the brick, the mortar, and that tacky tracksuit you're wearing. Richard owns nothing, and as of an hour ago, he doesn't even own his freedom." Mildred froze. "What? What are you talking about?" "Richard is in custody, Mildred," I said, savoring the words. "The police picked him up at the docks. He was trying to flee the country with his mistress and $50,000 of fake money I planted on him. He's being booked for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy right now. And do you know what the first thing he did was?" Mildred stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "He squealed." I lied. Well, mostly lied. He told them everything. He told them about the offshore accounts. He told them about the forged power of attorney. And he told them that Mommy helped him plan it. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "He wouldn't. He's a good boy." "He's a rat, Mildred, just like you raised him to be." I took a step closer. "And now here you are, caught red-handed trying to loot the vault. Do you know what's inside that safe?" Mildred's eyes darted to the safe. "The bonds, the Sterling family bonds." "No," I said softly. "I moved those months ago. Inside that safe is just one thing, a recording device." Mildred went pale. "I installed it when I started suspecting Richard. It's voice activated. It's been recording this entire tantrum of yours. The breaking in, the cursing, the intent to steal. You just narrated your own crime scene." Mildred looked at the safe, then at me, her face twisted into a mask of pure venom. "You witch," she hissed. "You cold-hearted witch. We should have thrown you in a home years ago. You never deserved him. You never deserved this money. You were just a bank account with a heartbeat." She lunged. For an 80-year-old woman, she was fast. She grabbed the heavy brass lamp from the desk and swung it at my head. I didn't even flinch. Michael stepped out of the shadows, caught her wrist in midair, and twisted it gently but firmly. The lamp fell to the floor with a thud. "That's assault," Michael said calmly. "Add it to the list." Mildred shrieked, thrashing against Michael's group. "Get your hands off me! Do you know who I am? I am a thorn!" "And I'm the guy calling the cops," Michael said, pulling out his phone with his free hand. 10 minutes later, the flashing lights were back. It was becoming a very busy night for the local precinct. I stood on the porch, sipping a glass of water, watching as 2 officers escorted a handcuffed, sobbing Mildred into the back of a squad car. "I'm an old woman. My sciatica. I need a doctor. She framed me." The officer shut the door, cutting off her noise. I took a deep breath. The rain had stopped. The air smelled of wet earth and ozone. Richard was gone. Mildred was gone. Ilara was gone. Volkov was gone. The house was quiet, but it wasn't the lonely silence I had felt for the last few years. It was the silence of a battlefield after the war is won. It was peaceful. Michael walked up the steps, holstering his phone. "That's it. The detective said they'll hold her overnight for arraignment. With the video from your doorbell earlier and the break-in tonight, she's not getting bail anytime soon." "Good," I said. "Let her rot." "So," Michael said, leaning against the pillar, "you did it. You took out the trash. What now, boss?" I looked out over the estate grounds. The sun was just starting to hint at rising in the east, turning the sky a bruised purple. "Now," I said, turning back to the open door of my home, "now we go to court. I have a company to save, a divorce to finalize, and a reputation to rebuild. I walked back into the library. I went to the safe, the one Mildred had been trying to open. I spun the dial. Left 40, right 10, left 50. The heavy door clicked open. There wasn't a recording device inside. That was a bluff to scare Mildred. But there was something else. A small velvet box I had placed there 30 years ago, on the day I married Richard. I hadn't looked at it since. I opened it. Inside was a single silver bullet. My father had given it to me as a joke, a memento from his days in the service. For the wolf at the door, he had said. I picked it up. It felt heavy, cool. The wolves were gone. But as I went to close the safe, I noticed something tucked way in the back, behind the velvet box. A stack of papers I didn't recognize. Yellowed, old papers. I pulled them out. My breath hitched. It was a prenup, the original draft, the one Richard had sworn he burned because our love didn't need contracts. But this wasn't the burned copy. It was a signed copy, signed by me, but not by him. And clipped to it was a letter, in handwriting I recognized instantly. Not Richard's, not Mildred's. It was my father's handwriting, dated 2 weeks before he died. Joyce, if you are reading this, I'm gone, and if you found this, it means you finally realized the truth about Richard. I couldn't tell you while I was alive. You were too in love. But you need to know where the seed money for Sterling & Co. really came from. It wasn't me, and it wasn't you. I stared at the letter. If the money didn't come from my father, then everything I thought I knew about my own empire was a lie. This wasn't over. The battle for the assets was just beginning, and the biggest skeleton was just falling out of the closet. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. I sat on the floor of the library, the letter trembling in my hands. The storm outside had passed, but the thunder was now rolling inside my head. It wasn't me, and it wasn't you. I turned the page. My father's handwriting continued, shaky but clear. Joyce, the $500,000 seed money that started Sterling & Co. in 1990 didn't come from my savings. It came from Arthur Thorne, Richard's father. I gasped. Arthur Thorne, the man I had only met a handful of times before he passed away, a quiet, brooding man who Richard always claimed was cheap and unsupportive. I kept reading. Arthur came to me the day before your wedding. He gave me a cashier's check. He made me swear never to tell Richard or Mildred. He said, "My son is weak and he has his mother's greed. They will run this family into the ground. But Joyce, that girl has fire. She has the brain. Bet on her, not him. But don't let them know or they'll feel entitled to her success." I dropped the letter. Tears pricked my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of validation. For 30 years, Richard had strutted around acting like he was the heir to a business empire. Mildred had acted like she was the queen mother who allowed me to marry into her prestige. But the truth? The patriarch of their own family, the man they supposedly revered, had bet against them. He had bet on me. He knew 30 years ago that his son was a failure and his wife was a leech. He gave me the money to build a kingdom specifically to keep it out of their hands. A slow smile spread across my face. This wasn't just a letter. This was the final nail in the coffin. I stood up. I didn't need to sleep. I had one last stop to make. 3 days later. The visitation room at the county detention center was cold and smelled like bleach. I sat on the metal stool, smoothing out my white suit, the color of new beginnings. On the other side of the glass sat Mildred. She looked terrible. The orange jumpsuit washed out her complexion. Her hair, usually sprayed into a concrete helmet, was limp and gray. She looked every day of her 82 years. She picked up the phone, her hand shaking. "You came to gloat, or did you come to bail me out? I'll sue you for false imprisonment, Joyce. I have friends on the board." "You have no friends, Mildred," I said calmly, "and the board voted to remove the Thorne family name from all buildings yesterday morning." She flinched. "You can't." "I can, and I did." I reached into my bag and pulled out a photocopy of the letter. I pressed it against the glass. "Read this, Mildred." She squinted, her eyes scanning the page. I watched the color drain from her face. I watched her read her late husband's words. "My son is weak, my wife is a leech." This is a lie," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "Arthur would never." "I did," I said. "He funded Sterling & Co. He gave me the money because he knew you and Richard were useless. He chose me, Mildred. He chose me over his own blood. Every dollar I made, every luxury you enjoyed for the last 30 years was because your husband trusted me to babysit his incompetence of a son." Mildred dropped the phone. She stared at the paper, then at me. Her mouth opened to scream, to curse, but nothing came out. The realization broke her. The arrogance that had sustained her for decades shattered. She wasn't the matriarch. She was the charity case. I hung up the phone. I didn't wait for Richard. I didn't need to see him. His father's letter said everything I needed to say to him. He was a bad investment from birth. 6 months later, the gavel banged, echoing through the packed courtroom. "Mr. Richard Thorne," the judge announced, looking down over his spectacles, "for the charges of grand larceny, wire fraud, and conspiracy, this court sentences you to 15 years in a federal correctional facility with no possibility of parole for the first 10. Richard collapsed into his chair, sobbing into his hands. He looked over his shoulder at me, sitting in the front row, looking for pity. I just checked my watch. I had a lunch reservation. Alara Vance took a plea deal. She got 5 years for testifying against Volkoff's network. She tried to catch my eye as she was led away, mouthing, "I'm sorry." I looked right through her. Mildred was declared unfit for prison due to rapid cognitive decline, a fancy way of saying the truth broke her brain. She was currently in a state-run facility, the kind with linoleum floors and Jell-O for dinner. I paid for the upgraded cable package. I'm not a monster. As I walked out of the courthouse, the paparazzi were waiting. Flashes popped. Reporters shouted questions. "Mrs. Sterling, Mrs. Sterling, what's next for the company? Is it true you're rebranding? How does it feel to be the Iron Widow?" I stopped at the bottom of the stairs. Michael was there, holding the door to the Bentley open. He looked sharp in a new suit. Head of security suited him well. I turned to the cameras. I lowered my sunglasses. "It's Ms. Sterling," I corrected them, flashing a smile that was sharp enough to cut glass. "And Sterling & Co. is history. We are launching next week under a new name." "What name?" a reporter shouted. "Phoenix Enterprises," I said. Richard had named his scam Project Phoenix, thinking he would rise from the ashes of my destruction. It was only fitting that I took the name. I was the one who walked through the fire. I was the one who rose. I got into the car. "Where to, boss?" Michael asked, looking in the rearview mirror. "The office, Michael," I said, opening my laptop. "I have a merger to finish in London, a real one this time." I looked out the window as the city rolled by. I was 60 years old. I was single. I was billions of dollars richer. And for the first time in 30 years, the passenger seat was empty, and I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. I pulled the silver bullet from my pocket, my father's gift, and rolled it between my fingers. The wolves were gone. The sheep were in their pens. And the shepherd, she was just getting started. This is the end of my story, but it could be the beginning of yours. Don't let anyone tell you it's too late to start over or that you're past your prime. If a 60-year-old grandmother can take down a crime syndicate and a cheating husband in 1 week, you can do anything. If you loved this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. Which character did you hate the most? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next story.